Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
She's passionate about telling stories of amazing women who are rocking the world and empowering women to live, love, and thrive. Here's your host, Katherine Gray.
Hi, welcome to Live, Love, Thrive Women's Empowerment Hour, brought to you by 360karma.com. As you know, we're all about empowering women, and every week we feature the most incredible ladies, and today is no different. Today we're going to have on writer and producer Hope Juber. Her dad was the creator of Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch, two of my favorites, I'm sure two of your favorites. And she is a trailblazing woman herself. Can't wait to talk to her. Please give a warm welcome to Hope Juber. Hi, Hope. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Katherine?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so happy to have you on today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I know we had lunch a couple weeks ago, and all of your stories were so fantastic. I couldn't wait to have you on and share them with everybody.
Well, thank you.
So starting off, first of all, it must have been really such an incredible experience being born here in L.A., and having your father create these like iconic shows. I mean, literally Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch were for sure two of my favorite shows, and I think most people from our generation.
Well, they at least knew what they were, even if they didn't love them.
Yeah.
Some of
But I
Gilligan.
think almost everybody loved them.
Well, Gilligan had its people who either loved it or hated. The critics specifically hated Gilligan's Island.
Really?
It got the worst reviews of any show up to that point in television history.
Kidding. Oh my God, I loved it. Loved it.
It
Says a lot about me.
I think it says a lot about critics. People are still
No,
loving
you're
it today.
right. It says a lot about critics. Like I never agree with them, so nothing's new. You know, they pan a movie, and I'll walk out and go, "Oh my God, I loved it." Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were just glad that the people actually saw what Dad meant with that show, and continues in its popularity. It's very good.
Now, the Brady Bunch, did that reflect your family in any way, or?
It did in the sensibility of it. It didn't in the origination of it.
Right.
The way that the Brady Bunch came to be was after Dad had done Gilligan, he was reading the paper and he saw an article in the Times that said that for the first time that families were being, the merged families were overtaking the singular nuclear family.
Because so many people were getting divorced?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
So it was a whole
And
shift in our culture.
Statistically, it was the first time that had become more prominent than the actual, like, mom, dad, two kids, together family.
And at that time, there was no other show that had two couples that had been divorced
Or
and
somebody
brought their
died,
kids together and remarried.
And Dad saw that article in the Times and thought to himself, every writer in Los Angeles is going to see this and going to write that show, so I better do it first.
Yeah.
So he ran in the other room and he did a treatment, ran to the Writers Guild that very morning, registered it, and thought, okay, well, I'm the first person who has it. And he went to the studios and everybody rejected it.
Oh my gosh, even after his success?
Even after his success. Wow. And then Yours, Mine, and Ours came out.
Yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah.
And it became a big hit. And when that happened, all the studios that he'd gone to called him up and said, remember that show that you brought in about the two families? We'd like to take another look at it.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how it actually came to be because of that little article in the Times.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Back in old Hollywood, there was, I think, less competition, right? I mean, it feels like it's more competitive today than it was.
Well, there's
speaking
certainly
of old Hollywood, new Hollywood.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that because it was still the birth of that generation of television watchers, and Dad had come from radio. He'd done the equivalent of situation comedy on radio, and then he actually wanted to be a doctor.
Oh my gosh!
When he was a young man, he wanted to be a doctor and came out to California to do pre-med. And his brother was working for Bob Hope. And so every once in a while, Dad would sell a joke to Bob Hope. And then when war broke out and Bob Hope needed USO writers, he plucked Dad to be one of his writers, and that kind of just kept him on that
interesting.
trajectory.
So Sherwood Schwartz, your
Yeah.
dad, first was writing jokes for Bob Hope before
Yes.
he actually wrote these sitcoms.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
And he started with Ozzie and Harriet on radio. Before it was a sitcom on TV, it was on radio.
Was Gilligan's Island like the first sitcom or one of the first sitcoms, right?
Not really, because there was like
What was the first ones? I don't remember.
that was
It would have been before my time,
It
or
was
our time, yeah.
before my time too.
Okay.
The first one that Dad worked on TV was, I believe, a show called I Married Joan, which was with Joan
okay.
Davis,
Right.
and it was a similar kind of show to I Love Lucy, where the woman was kind of wacky and the husband on that show on I Married Joan was Jim Backus, who ended up playing Mr. Howell on Gilligan's Island.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they had a long-standing relationship as when they worked together.
Television's changed so much over the years. Like, I'll look back at a show that I loved at that time, and then I'll go, I loved that show at that time. Do you ever do that? You go back and you go, because it's changed so much over the years, right? Over the decades, it grows and changes. Like Will and Grace is definitely different than the Brady Bunch, or it just evolves over time. It's interesting. But you're a writer, and you. And an actress. So you actually started off as an actress and had some reoccurring appearances on the Brady Bunch.
On the Brady, yeah, I
as
was Greg's girlfriend.
Yeah, and I know we actually have some cute pictures from that, including the one that most people remember, which is when the frog was on your head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Well-
still washing my hair.
I do tell people that. So I don't even remember the premise of that. How did that happen?
Oh, it was exact words that they had made. Greg lived by his exact words because he said those weren't my exact words. So when he had promised to take the kids to the frog jumping contest, he couldn't go out on his date with Rachel, which was me.
Yeah.
And so he went to the frog jumping contest, and then afterwards took me to a movie, and the frogs were still in the back.
That's
That
cute.
was an
That's
interesting
cute.
scene to film. There was like a whole
I don't
thing.
know how you did it. I would have been creeped out.
It was kind of creepy, and I knew it was coming. So,
Yeah.
but to do the whole scene, knowing that the frog was going to land on my head any moment, but I could not let that show because obviously I was in the middle of the scene. But there was a landing thing that they built over the car, and there was a guy on the landing with this bag of frogs, and he just was dropping them on my head.
Oh
And-
my God. So, how was Greg? Like, did you actually have a real life crush on him?
I didn't really.
No?
No,
Just
not
friendly?
so much. We're still good friends.
Cool.
I still keep in touch with Barry and with Maureen, the one who played Marcia.
yeah.
She and I are still very good friends.
Oh, that's so nice. And what about any of the Gilligan's Island people? Or
I'm still friends with Dawn. There are not very many of them left.
Yeah,
Dawn
I
and
know.
Tina. And Tina was a little bit more removed than the other castaways. That show for me was particularly fun because I was very young, and my school was right down the street from the set. And so after school, I'd always walk down the street and go to the set and hang out with the castaways. And it was like my backyard playground. I loved it, and I loved them. They were all just amazing. Just not only for actors playing their parts, because I don't think you could do a better casting than the casting of Gilligan's Island, but just as people, they just became such a close family. It was really,
cool.
It was great.
yeah, you hear that a lot, especially on sitcoms that run for many years. Yeah, it's so interesting. So that these ones are coming back, like Will and Grace, and last night I saw Roseanne, and it's interesting they're coming back after all these years.
Yes. it is.
So you are a prolific writer yourself, and took in your father's footsteps and wrote a musical called A Very Brady Musical. A Very Brady Musical,
Yes,
which won
and-
some awards, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we swept the Valley League Awards,
Yeah.
and
And you've
hopefully
written
we'll get to do that
plays
again.
and-
Yes, I wrote a play that I'm especially proud of because it combined things that I love. I like to combine different elements, and this play, it's called Without Annette. Annette, the girl's name, but also Without Annette, because because it is a scripted comedy set in an improvisation workshop.
Oh.
And there's a teacher and all the students who've come to study improv. and they all have their own, trajectories and characters, and they get involved, and it's got a plot and everything. But whenever they come to a place in the show where the class is going to do a scene or going to do a game, it's really improvised. So
Oh, wow.
it's an unusual form.
So every time it's different.
It's different.
I love
with little
that.
pockets of improv, and there's kind of roadmaps on how to get back into it. And people were coming to the show 3 and 4 times to say which parts were really improvised and which parts weren't, and it was always a surprise. And the actors loved it because it was fresh every night.
I love that. And will you be doing that again, or?
I would love to do that one again. We've already done it twice, and we just got published in New York, so
Oh,
hopefully a lot of
exciting.
people will be doing it.
Yeah.
And one thing I found really interesting, because I was kind of curious about actors who had not done or had experience in improv, if they would be able to do the show. And when we did it the second time, there were 3 actors who had never had experience with improv, and by the end of the run, they were improvisers.
Oh my
It
gosh.
actually taught them how to do it. And so I think it would be a really interesting play for theater companies.
Yeah, so that they could hone that skill. and
Yes.
that's very cool.
Yes, and for
I've never heard
improvisers.
anything like that. It's
Thank
so
you.
ingenious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's also for improvisers who want to show off their acting chops.
Right, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You also write music.
Yes.
And you had a band called the Housewives, which is now, you have one called the Nasty Housewives,
That's
which
right.
I love. And you say it's for the Sisters.
Yes.
Cute,
Yes.
cute.
Yes.
And tell me about some of that music, because you all are, can we come hear you play? Or are you
Well,
playing
you can
now? Or?
see the videos
Oh,
on the
great.
website. If anybody wants to check it out, they can go to thenastyhousewives.com. But you have to make sure to put the in there, or you
Okay.
just get porn.
So, thenastyhousewives.com.
Yes.
And we can see you all perform.
Right.
And the music is things like, I know you named one of them Mar-a-Lago. And
Nevertheless, she persisted, and it's all basically protest
Yeah.
songs.
because you felt like there wasn't a niche for that, right? That kind of music wasn't really out there, so you saw an opportunity to.
Yes, well, I had the Housewives, which was a comedy rock and roll band, which combined, like, we called it domestic rock and roll, because it was songs about things that people didn't really write songs about before.
Right.
And we got very popular in the 80s through the 90s on lots of television shows. We did all Oprah and all the morning shows.
Really?
And then when I stopped performing, I really hadn't wanted to be involved in performing in a band anymore until the election.
Yeah.
And right before the election, I was at the gym, and I was sitting next to a woman, and she was shaking her head in dismay as she was watching Trump on one of the monitors. And I wasn't sure if she was ill or upset or what. So I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No, I'm not. I can't stand him." And I said, "Oh, I'm there too. I can't either." So we started talking, and she said she was a songwriter. And I asked her if she had written anything I might have heard of. And she said, the song Lay Down Sally. And I said, "Yeah."
Oh, my God, we
You
love
mean
Lay Down Sally.
Clapton? And she said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I was in Clapton's band." So she happened to be a big fan of my husband. He's a guitar player.
Yep.
And so...
He's been a guitar player for Paul McCartney.
Right, he was
Yeah.
in Wings, yes.
Yeah.
And so she was a fan of his, and she came over one day, and we were discussing the lack of protest songs. And we started to write these songs, and they really wrote themselves. Every time I turned on the TV, whether it was Dressed Like a Woman, or Overrated, or Mar-a-Lago, or Bowling Green Massacre, it's like every time I turned on the TV, it was another song title.
Right.
So we wrote an album's worth of songs, and we did videos for all of them.
Oh, my
And they're all
gosh.
up on our website.
I love that.
And we brought Roberta Freeman. Now, Marcella Detroit is the woman I was talking about. She's an extraordinary writer and singer and performer. And then we wanted one other woman, and we brought Roberta Freeman in, who's a great backup singer. And so that became the Nasty Housewives.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. We need that kind of music right now. And,
Yes.
everything you do is always very timely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You had the most interesting story about how you met your husband that we were just talking about, Lawrence. Who, like you said, was played guitar for Paul McCartney in Wings, and you were a huge Beatles fan, as many of us are.
As most people should be, I think.
As most people should be. And you told me the most outrageous story about how you and him met.
Yes, I sometimes looking back on it, it is astounding to me that it is really the story.
The story you tell me is absolutely surreal.
I agree.
So I know it started when John Lennon had been killed.
Yes.
And you were devastated by this.
Yes, as most of
As
the world
most of America
was. Yes.
and the world.
Yeah, but I wasn't really coming out of it very well.
Right.
And I was very, very depressed, and my parents noticed that I just wasn't doing well. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to get up. I just was so devastated that somebody would assassinate an artist like that.
Right.
And one day my mother called me up and she said, well, I have an idea. Why don't you go get your hair done? That'll make you feel better. And
You were like, what?
Oh yeah, I was like, Mom, but I knew she meant
was
well.
Yeah, she was trying.
Yeah, she wanted me to feel better, so I said, okay, I'll get my hair done.
Yeah.
So she made an appointment, and I went to Beverly Hills where her hairdresser guy was, and he started doing my hair, and he said, you look really sad. What's going on with you? And I said, well, I've been really depressed ever since John Lennon was killed. And he said, well, you know what? I have one more client. So go downstairs and walk around the block once. When you're done, I'll be done. And then we'll go have a cup of coffee and we can talk. And I thought, okay, fine, I'll do that. So I went downstairs and I started to walk around the block. And I really wasn't looking where I was going. I just had my head down and I ended up like walking straight into somebody. I was like, bam. And I was on a pair of boots. And I looked up and I was standing on Ringo Starr.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
I know.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it myself. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm just so sorry I stepped on you. And I turned to leave and I said, and I'm so sorry about John. And he called to me and he said, hold on a minute, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, sure. And I turned around, came back, and he was there with his wife, Barbara. And he said, can I talk to you about my relationship with John? I want to just talk to you. And I said, sure. I was surprised. I mean, I didn't know him. And
Yeah.
so he started.
He needed to talk too, it sounds like.
I guess so. Or maybe he just saw it in my face.
Yeah,
he just
it must
knew.
have been some sort of connection between you two that is intangible, as often it is.
It really surprised me that he wanted
just connected.
to. Yeah. And he said, I'd like to just talk to you for a minute. And I said, okay. So he's telling me about his relationship with John and about this new album that he was working on. And for him, like, work was the most important thing. The focus on work can bring you in through any kind of depression or any kind of sadness. The thing that will help you through your troubles is really to focus in on the work. It gives you a real reason.
So here's Ringo giving you a pep talk.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's surreal, like I said.
I know, and I was shocked,
Yeah.
and I thanked him so much, and I went home, and I was thinking about it a lot, and in a couple of days, I got a phone call from my dad, and he said, I'm working on this new show, and I'd like you to come down and be a writer on the show. And he'd asked me to do that on a few of other shows, but I always was like, no, I'm not going to write with my dad. I'm going to make it on my own. And I changed my name and everything. And he asked me if I would come down and be a writer on the show. And I was going to say no. And then I thought, maybe that whole Ringo encounter, maybe that was telling me I just need to work.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I started working at Paramount on the Brady Brides, which was a spin-off from the Brady Bunch. Mm-hmm. And I became a story editor pretty quickly on the show. And our soundstage was right next to the Mork and Mindy soundstage. Mm-hmm. And I ended up in this really kind of fun relationship with Robin Williams.
Right. Oh, my God. What a magnificent man.
Oh, my, yeah.
Brilliant.
He absolutely brilliant and really sensitive and sweet. And he was going to New York to do The World According to Garp.
Oh, right.
And he said, if you get a chance, I'd like you to come join me in New York. And I said, okay, well, we're in the middle of filming, so I don't know that I could do it. But if we go on hiatus, I'll give you a call. And he said, okay, call my house. So I called his house when we went on hiatus, and this woman answered the phone, and she had a very thick accent, and her name was Charlie. And she said, oh, yeah, he said you'd be calling, and here's where he's staying. So I went to New York. And he was going to do an interview one night. And he said, I'm going to send you to a club to wait for me. And I said, okay. So I went to this club and I walked in and I heard that the guitarist for McCartney was there. Now, I didn't know the members of Wings at all, but I thought that was cool, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to this woman who at the bar, we're sitting there at the bar, and she was a singer, and she said, oh, I'm working with these musicians, and here they come. Do you want to meet them? I said, sure. So these three guys walk over, and Lawrence is in the middle. And it was one of those movie moments or sitcom moments where everything gets all hazy and weird, and it's just like him and me. And I just forgot all about why I was in New York, forgot all about Robin, and I ended up walking out with Lawrence. And we went for something to eat, and then we went back to his apartment, and I walked in, and there was a gigantic Wings poster, and I said, that's you. And he said, yeah, I was in that band. So it had gone from John Lennon's death to Ringo to Paul's guitar player, and that night Lawrence started talking about marriage.
Oh,
he knew immediately when he saw me that we were going to get married.
The night he met you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
And
my God, that is wild.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And what's crazier is
I think if somebody started talking about marriage the night I met them, I would have run so fast. But here you are, 25 years later, or how long?
36.
36?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he
When
said,
you know, you know.
Yes. And he said that that his girlfriend, his old girlfriend, was staying at Eric Idle's house in L.A. doing an album, and I said, no, she's not. And she said, what do you mean she's not? I said, her name's Charlie, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, she's at Robin's house. So I had spoken to his old girlfriend just hours before I got on the plane.
Oh my God.
And then Lawrence had just finished working on Ringo's album. That album that Ringo was talking about,
right.
Lawrence played lead guitar.
So it kind of went full circle.
It was all these connections. I felt like it was so Beatle connected, and I was just kind of picked up and put into New York to meet Lawrence.
Unbelievable.
And that's how we met. It's crazy, but
And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but one of the stories I loved that you told me is that eventually it was a day coming that you were going to go over to the studio and meet
George Harrison.
George Harrison.
Yes.
But you were pregnant.
Yes. So
you go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah, I was pregnant, but we'd made arrangements that the next day I was going to go meet George Harrison because I'd never met him. And so that night I went into labor. And instead of here comes the son, it was here comes the daughter. So went to the hospital, gave birth, and Lawrence went off to work with George. And that morning I got a call from George Harrison saying, if you're able to, bring the baby. I'd love to meet you, meet the baby. So Ilse was 2 days old, and we brought her to the recording studio.
I have goosebumps over this story.
It was the first place she'd ever gone.
Yeah, wow.
And George came and took her out of the carrier and started waltzing with her in this big cavernous studio, and he's waltzing and he's talking to her in Sanskrit, and we just stood back, and it was like magic. And he came over and he said something to her in Sanskrit, and he touched her here, and he handed her to me, and I said, what did you say? And he said, well, I was just enjoying this new life and feeling her energy, and at the end I decided that I would really like to give her the gift of music, and so I did.
Oh my gosh.
And now she's writing hit songs.
She is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, your daughter's name?
Ilse.
Ilse.
Ilsey.
And I know you mentioned a couple of the songs that she...
Oh, she had one on the Beyonce album. She has one on Kelly Clarkson's new album.
God,
She
I love
wrote
Kelly.
Mercy for Shawn Mendes. She's
she's rocking and rolling, so to
she
speak.
is, yeah. And my other daughter's name is Nico. I don't want to give her short shrift.
Absolutely. And what does Nico do?
Nico works for Adobe. She's an advertising, she's like an executive over there. She markets their new products.
Well, I knew you'd have two smart, trailblazing daughters.
And she has two kids, and she runs a nonprofit organization called Thrive Survive for young cancer survivors.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Two amazing women. Huh?
I'm very proud of them. They have
It's a good time to be a woman, and it's a good time to be a young woman because just so many doors and ceilings are flying off the wall now, opening up for women to be able to do anything and everything.
It's really true.
We're still 4% of the CEOs. We're still only 15% of the government, but that's all changing. Look at what these wonderful kids in Parkland have done this week. Raised an
so much
entire
respect for those
movement around
people.
this country.
Yes.
Those kids in Parkland.
I
Bravo
think-
to them.
Bravo. And I think
Yeah.
it's that kind of not even enthusiasm, passion and personal devotion to their cause. That's, I mean,
They're
that was
unstoppable.
yeah. That's what it took with the Vietnamese.
Yes.
That was the Vietnam protests. It was. I remember.
Young people.
I led walkouts for that, and I was 17, 16 years old, and that it didn't affect me personally. But when we got the passion for we have to do this,
Right.
those passionate kids become unstoppable, and
Right.
that's what it takes. So
Right.
I'm really proud of them, and I have a lot of faith in those kids.
And I am proud of you and the passion you have with your focusing on the Re-Sisters with the Nasty Housewives.
Thank you.
And all the cool stuff that you're doing. I know you have a great women's empowerment movie script in the works. So, Hope, you're so talented, and
Thank you.
you know, it's so important that people use their gifts to give back. That's
Yes.
why we're here.
Yes.
So, keep it up, sister.
I certainly
keep it up,
will.
Re-Sister.
I don't intend to stop.
I love it. Well, we will be back next week with more great women on the show. Of course, you know, check us out at 360karma.com because we are all about empowering women and empowering you. So follow us on our Facebook and, of course, Twitter and Instagram at My360Karma. Take care. Make it a great day. Hugs and happiness.